So hello everyone, I'm Vivian and I come from DeThings, a Web3 media company from Singapore. Welcome to our special show today. It's a tremendous honor to be here in the beautiful country of South Korea and engaging in an in-depth conversation with the co-founder of Nibiru Chain, Unique Divine. Yes, and Kevin Young and the COO Jonathan. And Jonathan will be the co-host for today's show. Welcome. Yeah. Jonathan, can you share some about your experience about I can see some traditional finance in the investment banking, equity research. How does this experience help you come into the work?
Yeah, happy to talk a bit more about my background and some of the stuff that's been helpful in the pathway that we've had as layer one. I grew up in Canada, and then went to school at Queen's University, did equity research at Credit Suisse, out of the gates in New York for a couple of years, alongside investment banking at JP Morgan. Then I worked at GIC, the Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund, based in San Francisco. So it was the first foray into crypto there, where I covered a mix of crypto and fintech. So I think, coming from traditional finance, we all have sort of complementary backgrounds, but I think it was helpful from just understanding the culture building analytical framework and processes that they sort of had there, and it enabled us to sort of reapply them in a startup culture. And I think, Kevin might have similar stories from his experience at Google, but I think in general, in research, I had some better writing skills, analytical understanding of capital markets. Investment banking had a bit softer skills from advising a variety of clients, and then the investing lens is actually very helpful from some of our ecosystem building efforts, which is most similar to venture. So being able to develop a thesis on different verticals or different founding teams, I think, is sort of helpful from understanding the people that we want to partner with. But why don't I pause there, and we'll love to learn more about Unique and Kevin and how you guys started in your backgrounds a bit, and then how you guys came to the role on Nibiru.
So I guess starting from my background, I studied a mixture of physics and computer science at Columbia University in New York City, and basically worked mostly in AI. So as an AI engineer, and just sort of general software engineering. Foray into Web3 was through around the end of 2021. So how we actually met was in that following ETH Denver. So I worked on the Sommelier protocol primarily. As lead data scientist, I worked a lot on developing on-chain strategies for things like Uniswap and Aave. And I guess what particularly was useful there is it's starting with a project that's multi-chain to begin with. So getting some familiarity with both the Ethereum side of things, but then also the stack that we build on in Tendermint. And getting a chance to work with, some of the core people that sort of birthed the Cosmos ecosystem in particular, and worked with the SDK.
My background, I also grew up in Canada. I went to University of Waterloo and studied engineering there. After college, I went to work at Google in the San Francisco Bay Area for 3 years. I was on the Google Ads team, and we were running some of the fastest, most heavy loaded servers in the world. Personally, I developed and operated a server that handled 30 million queries every second that served pretty much all the display ads in the Google Ad network. There I learned a lot about how the internet actually works, down to the protocol level, and how to scale systems, and how to maintain and build software that lasts for a really, really long time. And that has helped me in Nibiru because we run a lot of software outside of just the blockchain itself. The blockchain itself has to be secure and always available, but there's a ton of other software around it, like tooling, indexing, explorers, front ends, deployment pipelines. All of that has to work really, really well for us to move at a really fast pace. Done other startups in the Bay Area before, and Jonathan was actually the one that pulled me into crypto, and that's where I met Unique at ETH Denver. Many years ago, and that's where we're at right now.
And you two were classmates before?
John and I were never in the same class, but we sat together on a school bus in middle school. Yeah,
Nice.
he'd always eat my popcorn.
Okay, yeah, so today we will dive into the story behind the Nibiru Chain and how it's making breakthrough in the blockchain domain, and how does this innovative team envisions the future of technologies and market trends. So join me on this exploratory journey. So with the first question, I really want to know why you guys focus on the layer one blockchain, because for nowadays the competitive Web3 crypto technologies among the various type of blockchains. Why did you decide to focus on creating a layer one, yeah, instead of the other?
One is basically the trade-offs that you get from working on an L2 in terms of like security and that they're not actually composable is like a big downside of doing that. So what I mean is when you're working with like Ethereum and you move to, let's say that you need your Matic to use a Polygon, but then want to also have an interaction with Arbitrum, you're always kind of tied to that settlement layer coming back to the L1. But there's not actually interoperability between the L2s as much. So they work as a solution if your goal is just to scale Ethereum, but if it's more broadly to, I guess, work as a cohesive app, or especially if there are multiple chains interacting, you want to. It's better to have more things like Solana or more things like Nibiru than more L2s, I would say. The other side of that answer, part of the team backgrounds. So one of the other people that's not here for this interview, but core contributor is Jonathan Chang. So he was like the engineering director at Tendermint for several years before we worked on Nibiru. In my case, Solana was multi-chain, but working Ethereum and Cosmos, right? So IBC ecosystem as well. And then we also have like heavy contributors of others that were on the Tendermint team or Cosmos SDK. And so the like skill set tended very well to working on, staying with that IBC tech stack. Yeah, so part of it is so kind of to boil that down more concisely, I guess it's strong convictions around there being a multi-chain future and wanting something that's conducive to horizontal scaling.
In addition to experience as Cosmos veteran.
And yeah, in addition to our own experiences, exactly.
I actually have a technical take on that question. So when I look at layer ones today, they're pretty disjoint from the ecosystem of applications building on them. Like the governance structure for Uniswap is completely disjoint from the governance structure of Ethereum. And so you kind of get this like tension of incentives where the Ethereum foundation that develops and builds Ethereum wants to make they have their own roadmap that's separate from the needs and wants of the dApps that are building on it. And so you get this like disconnect between projects and the infrastructure. By building a customized layer one ourselves, we're able to kind of align incentives and vertically integrate our way to the end user dApps themselves by building every layer of the stack. So from the consensus engine all the way up to financial alternatives like stablecoins and protocols, all the way up to even some end user dApps ourselves. And we find like this vertical integration works really well in Web2. When you look at companies like Apple, they build everything from the chips all the way up to the end user software, right? They build the phones, they build the laptops, they build the operating system, they build the end user hardware like mice, AirPods, and then they have iCloud in the cloud, they have iTunes, App Store, everything. And that kind of vertical integration gives, we think, the best user experience because everything is just aligned internally, philosophically, and economically.
So I guess the summary there is you guys saw some sort of opportunity to improve the layer one ecosystem as it stood now, and then there was also an exciting opportunity to make that more efficient.
Yeah, exactly.
And how do you view the current public blockchain ecosystem? Like, how does Nibiru Chain find its place within it?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, right? Because we have a bunch of old generation of blockchains from the last life cycle. Solana, Avalanches, the world, and Ethereum. You have a couple of the new ones, ourselves included, in addition to Injective, say, like unreleased folks like Bear Chain, for example, Neutron. How do you find your place within that ecosystem that's a bit different? It is interesting that a lot of people have gravitated to more general purpose sort of blockchains. You might see some differences in like the smart contract language, right? So Aptos and Sui will be more move specific. We're initially Cosmos, but we'll have EVM on the roadmap. But you have networks effect from being from already sitting in Ethereum. So like the Solidity contractors are easy to port over dApps into our ecosystem if we're EVM native. But so making sure that we have VMs associated with multiple languages, I think, is one focus of that. In addition to a lot of the classical innovations, so a lot of people focus on transactions per second, which is because it's a prevalent issue within Ethereum, right? With only 20 TPS, it's pretty costly in terms of gas to actually execute. So we make improvements there. We have 40,000 TPS, we have 1.4 second block times, instant finality, parallelized execution. A lot of these things other people do market as well. So I think I would draw the difference more towards the fact that we have this comprehensive developer suite. So in the past, we've always had folks that could execute and build stuff, quality of the engineering team. So we built out things like the indexing solution or the Oracle module or smart contract royalties. So that in itself is one narrative in addition to core native dApps that we'll build out. So we launched our layer 1 March 12th, which is 1 or 2 weeks ago. That's just the layer 1. In 3 to 4 months, we're targeting the release of the Perps AMM, a spot AMM, and a stablecoin. So together, those will act as, the initial magnet to draw people to the ecosystem. And this is sort of a problem we saw with other layer ones where they'll launch, they'll focus on the infra, but there's no real use cases or applications that you sort of associate within the ecosystem. So it helps kickstart the flywheel by building the dApps in addition to the layer 1. So those are the couple of things that we focus on. High level, I would say, it focuses on comprehensive, developer onboarding, user onboarding with simplicity. So it kind of gets to the point Kevin was alluding to with the Apple analogy, an over-complex environment that you want to make much worse. And that's the sort of idea of differentiation.
Good point of view. Yeah. Also, when it comes to the topic of the layer 1 blockchain, the security is also a very important topic. So next question, I want to hand over to Kevin. What key technologies or innovations has Nibiru Chain adopted to achieve high throughput and outstanding security?
So on the throughput side, we made some tweaks to the term consensus parameters to drop some timeouts. We felt that the timeouts were inefficient, so we cut them down by several times. That reduced the block speed by a lot, and that's how we got higher TPS, because the block limit is kind of still the same. You're just producing faster blocks per unit time. On the security side, we adopted tournament proof of stake, so it's like one of the oldest OG proof of stake consensus mechanisms out there. A lot of other chains have adopted it too. Yeah, it's never been attacked before. It has instant finality, which is a really nice feature that Ethereum doesn't have yet, because Ethereum still has the 2 epoch time to finalize everything with Casper FFG, whereas tournament blocks get finalized as soon as they're produced. It's Byzantine fault tolerant, so you need, it's secure up to 33% voting power. We have a large decentralized validator set, so we support up to 150 validators, and that could go up more in the future. Possibly supporting up to, the practical limit is about 300, the theoretical limit is 10,000. So that's kind of like the level of decentralization that we're targeting. We also added additional constraints into the Oracle itself, where if validators start voting bad prices on price pairs outside of a certain band, then they also get slashed and penalized for that. So we impose additional slashing conditions on these validators, similar to how like EigenLayer imposes additional slashing conditions onto validators that run ABSs. So those are kind of the tweaks that we made to improve security and throughput of the blockchain.
Yeah, and how does Nibiru Chain aim to be the most suitable smart contract ecosystem for developers and users?
Yeah, so we want to support many more VMs. We're Cosmosing right now, and there is also like native Golang modules, but we're trying to move away from that and try to target the broader developer ecosystem. So EVM support is on the roadmap this year. We have Golang SDK, Python SDK, we have a TypeScript SDK, Rust packages for our Cosmos smart contracts, and we have a bunch of example smart contracts that are production ready, open source on GitHub. We have a DevRel guy and myself in Telegram answering questions all the time. making constant updates to our documentation. Unique writes a lot of documentation for the community. So yeah, just trying to meet developers where they're at, and yeah, run hackathons, workshops. We have an accelerated program coming up soon that will really help that developers, kickstart their idea.
Yeah, so that definitely will lower the barrier for the developers and users coming to the chain. And what major technical or operational challenges have you encountered during the development of the chain? And how have you overcome them?
With RPC scaling, right?
Yeah, that's
With
the
the RPC.
yeah. You can talk about that.
I mean, you know more about it.
Okay. We ran into some scaling concerns with the RPC endpoints on Cosmos nodes. So we switched over to use a different database format for the embedded state database. So before we were using LevelDB, now we're using RocksDB. RocksDB is like the Facebook improvement over Google's LevelDB. It has parallelization and additional caching improvements. So that improved the query performance of our nodes manyfold, up to 20x for some of the query patterns because they're written efficiently. But at the same time, it used a lot more memory. So then we had this memory issue where the nodes kept on adding more and more state payloads into cache. So now we're investigating other database alternatives that are native on Golang, like PebbleDB, because RocksDB was a C library that we had to stack the link in the build process. That was kind of a pain because you need validators and node operators have to install these libraries from Debian, get, and then they had to make sure they all existed, and they had to have all these command line flags in GCC. So it's kind of a pain to compile and run these binaries. We built our source ones as well for them, but some people don't like to just run binaries given to you by other people. So RocksDB was one kind of big improvement of the pain point at the same time. We're trying to move away from that into PebbleDB. Another one is kind of running the indexer as well, because our first version of the indexer was written in Python. It's not as fast as other compiled languages, and it also heavily hit the RPC endpoints directly. So then one of our engineers has a great idea to read the DB state files directly, just by parsing the YAPL trees and reading it using a LevelDB or a SST file reader. So then we started doing that, and now our indexer runs blazingly fast. Within a second after the blog is published, you'll have the data available in the GraphQL endpoint. So now we're trying to productionize that GraphQL endpoint, add rate limiting, and then expose that with an API reference for our dApps to use for free.
In the context of the cooperation and competition with other layer ones, what strategies has Nibiru Chain adopted to promote the ecosystem groups?
Yeah. So one thing that is, we kind of started with a research approach of looking at which things are key to have in the ecosystem to kind of unblock other projects. So we already had an Oracle that we developed, but one of the other things was working with a provider to have zero knowledge proofs, making sure that someone can put the NFT marketplace and minting and some of the other key Legos that you need. I guess one thing to differentiating from other ecosystems beyond just a lot of the technical pieces we've outlined already, is actually the kind of support beyond just an initial introduction from the BT team. So one of our strengths thus far, I guess for at least the projects given to Benone is, not just supporting them where you kind of throw money at them with a grant, but actually, almost become a part of their team a little bit, where you help them design parts if they have pain points, or make sure that they're actually able to get everything deployed and running smoothly on testnet and then eventually mainnet.
Mm-hmm. And how do you view the role of the cross-chain technology in the ecosystem?
I guess it's there's IBC within Cosmos, but then interoperability with things outside of Cosmos, and then exchange on ramps. And those, I guess you can interpret that question as just how do you have?
Oh, how do we do distribution?
Yeah, distribution.
Oh, okay.
How do you get access to the ecosystem?
So we worked with, so our key points, I guess, it mostly come through, you have centralized exchanges, right, which are a native integration. But in our case, it's also one of the first things we prioritized was making sure there's a connection through Axelar, and then we also have liquidity to access over wormhole. So if you add IBC, Axelar, wormhole, that actually means there's kind of like one step between us and ETH, all the layer twos, Solana, everything like that. And then also we prioritized like, making sure that there's kind of a fair launch, right? Where instead of it being that there's a small number of token holders and the inflation on the network starts immediately, you actually do the exchange launches first and then start kind of turn the network on so that everybody has a chance to participate in it. Yeah, so those are kind of the areas for distribution. That was like a key priority because that is one problem in particular on a lot of Cosmos projects is not moving or not accessing anything outside of osmosis.
Jonathan, so this time you're coming to the Australia. So is mainly to attending the ESOR or what's our target this time?
Yeah. So I think the priority to date has been focusing on getting the chain up and running. So we did an earlier VC raise, we did a coinless sale, we did our actual mainnet launch. But to date, we haven't spent as much time in Asia. So that's why part of this trip, being in Korea, is making that push here in Asia now that we're launched. So we have someone on the ground that we hired, and it's some small interacting with her on the ground. In addition to like sort of just establishing the framework that we want to use. So when we think of APAC, we want to maybe target, in addition to Korea, there's China that we want to target, India, Thailand, Vietnam at the minimum. And that's based on the presence of where a lot of builders are, where a lot of users, and where liquidity might actually lie. So we're excited to be here, of course. But great to meet the people, great to meet the local companies, marketing agencies, in addition to the actual builders on the ground. And folks like yourself.
Yeah, that's cool. That's our DCs are doing because we're based in Singapore. So definitely, I think those those audience will see your voice. And can you share maybe with us about your future prospects for the Nibiru Chain? What's your goal to the end of this year? And some roadmaps.
Yeah, so it's just a few things, but they're all kind of big. So the basically in order would kind of be the either EVM or parallel execution to come up. So EVM in this case meaning not just only adding to the chain. Basically right now it parses Blossom VM, so you can do Cosmos contracts. It would also add the ability for people to deploy Solidity contracts, which opens us up to a much broader development ecosystem. Just makes it easier because most of the TVL and usage is still in Ethereum, even if there are better technologies now. And parallel execution, that's just more throughput, better propensity to consumer apps. And then, we still have, for those that have been following the project, right, like Nibi Perps, Nibi Swap, and the NUST stablecoin. So basically, those are like dApps coming out of like the foundation core development team. But then, of course, there's a plethora of dApps launching in the ecosystem throughout the year. And those would be the major things we're developing.
Yeah, thank you so much. And this is all about today's interview. Thank you so much. Thank you.